Spaceport? Inga's father said, slapping his thighs repeatedly, his slack mouth wet. Ha! Spaceport! We— Sarah! Eldridge interrupted without turning his head. Yes, my lord? One of the Sinclair Maru youths replied. Name and class of every vessel you see, if you please. Inga saw all 5 of her young non-cousins turn their focus outward to the collection of ships dotting the tarmac. 4 silent observers as Sarah began identifying and classifying each vessel. This, Inga noted, effectively silenced her father, who muttered something inaudible, shrugging, no trace of his usual streetwise front remaining. She craned to see their path ahead weaving through a variety of craft, terminating at 3 large hangar doors sunk into a sort of hillside, a familiar crest over the arch. Any resident of Battersea's port city knew the Sinclair Maru crest on sight. Though they no longer stood among the greatest families of the Imperium, on the planet of Battersea, the Sinclair Maru retained the fading brilliance of their former glory. Inga eased back on her seat as they swept on through the cavernous hangar mouth, the girl, Sarah, breaking off in her recitation of ship names. The vehicle eased to a halt beside a pair of more human-scaled doors. Excellent, Sarah, their leader Eldridge said, looking at his students. Debark and assemble, please. The 5 youths stood nearly in unison, each clipping their training sword in place as the vehicle door sighed open, their neat uniforms adding to the martial air that clung to them. Like them, Inga and her siblings bore the right to the sword, vested citizens all. But Lee's cheap blade was the only survivor of their penury, Lee's dissolution. Instead, Inga, Mitzi, and Carl wore the black wristband of citizenship, the outward sign of their proud right. Thus far in Inga's life, that constituted a right to poverty and abuse, at times causing Inga to look with envy upon the lowly demi-sit residents in their comfortable domicile pods. If you please, sir, Eldridge said, beckoning to Lee as he stepped into the open expanse of the hangar beside his 5 young pupils. Lee stood, self-consciously straightening the rattling sword at his waist and running a hand across his garish shirt. Come on, Lee ordered, without looking at Inga or her siblings. Inga lifted Flops from her lap, carefully holding its tattered, smelly form to her chest, its beaded eyes and long, cloth ears facing outward. She shouldered the satchel holding Mitzi's and Carl's meager belongings and stood. Before Inga could lift her own bag, Mitzi seized her hand and buried her face in Inga's hip. Mitzi's fingers tapped out, scared, on Inga's hand. Hold on to my shirt button, Inga whispered. I've got to grab my kit. Carl shrank back beside Inga, as the kind-eyed youngster, Safe, appeared at hand. If I may, Mistress Maru, Safe said, lifting Inga's bag. Inga eyed him carefully but said, Thank you, as she nodded. Safe stepped back out into the hangar, Inga's mangy bag in hand, and Inga saw one of his classmates smirking to his fellows. Safe caught the exchanged look, too. Good manners amuse you, Omi? Safe demanded of his real cousin. Inga paused. She well knew a challenge when she heard one, and the Omi fellow seemed a trifle older and larger than Safe. In her experience, such a scenario generally resulted in a thrashing, at least in the dismal slum where failed citizens like Inga's family lived. Inga looked over at Eldridge, standing beside her father, seemingly deaf and blind for the moment. Omi opened his mouth, closed it, and then said, No, Safe. Thought not, Safe said, motioning to Inga as Omi flushed. Inga stepped into the hangar, Carl gripping her shirt on one side, Mitzi clenching her hand on the other, Flops bobbling against her bony chest. This way, please, Eldridge said, moving through the cavernous space toward a nearby door. Inga spared a look around the hangar, observing the spacecraft caged by gantries at one end. Even to her untrained eye, the vessel seemed dated and worn. However, the peeled skin panels and half-assembled subsystems aided in that impression.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.